Hello and welcome to the Fit for Privacy Podcast, the podcast for those who care about privacy. I'm your host Punit, and here we have conversations with industry leaders about their perspectives, ideas, and opinions relating to privacy and data protection matters. Before we start, a quick disclaimer that the views and opinions expressed are not legal advice. So let's get started. Hello and welcome. Today in the Fit for Privacy podcast, we have a very special guest. He's a practitioner and practitioner to the core. He's a DPO. He has been an IT architect. He is a compliance manager. He has implemented a privacy compliance program, and he's also been a risk manager. So I'm talking about Klaas Ghesquiere, who's a data protection officer in true sense and has seen different parts of an organization. So welcome, Klaas.
Thank you, Punit. Good evening.
Thank you. And if I may ask you, so with such a diverse background, how did you come into the field of privacy? How did it happen?
Well, it's partly by chance, partly by interest. I think in early 2015, something like that, I was in a seminar on big data as IT and security architect. I was looking into how to best handle that. And I must have read something wrong in the description, because I was in a room full of people from hospitals, and we were all talking more about GDPR and upcoming legislation, while I wasn't really aware of it, what it was. I just knew it, accepted. And so I started getting interested. And basically from there on, it was starting to become more and more interesting, because this is a challenge. And then the chance occurred that the company where I was working at that time, that everybody had to have a DPO if you had certain criteria which were met there. And then there's the chance to see if there's somebody interested within the company, because there's always an advantage if you know the company. So, and that's how I more or less rolled into it. So both chance and also interest. And I haven't left it yet since, so it's I still find it interesting.
I think that's quite a few people who come into privacy like that. They were in IT or compliance or risk management or security sometimes, and they got an opportunity. Of course, there are a lot of us from legal background. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, and I think you're also not a lawyer.
Correct. I used to say, my former boss used to say, he was one of the first people that he knew that wanted to go from IT to the legal background. So it's I find it interesting. So. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not legally trained.
Indeed. And how would you describe GDPR in one word, if I may ask you?
I'm gonna give two different words for those, because I know you're asking one, but this is a challenge, and it's also opportunity.
Yes, challenge and opportunity. So really a balanced perspective you have.
For the reason for the challenge is that it is a complex matter, but on the other hand, trying to translate something complex into something understandable is for me is really, I like solving puzzles. I like having translate logical issues into a solution which people understand, and that's the opportunity there you get. By being a DPO, I have seen so many different areas of an organization that I would never have seen if I would just be still in IT. And that doesn't mean that IT is not interesting. It's just, I see a whole complete different area of work, and that's the opportunity part. So it's a challenge and an opportunity at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It is completely a challenge as well as an opportunity. Because when I started, I was in the IT team and they thought it's an IT project. But eventually I realized it was across the bank, touching every department. So I got to meet a lot of people. That was an opportunity.
Yeah, it is, but at the same time, it is the challenge there is also that you have to be able to talk to a lot of different backgrounds, because you have to all of a sudden from IT, which is a challenging environment also. But then now all of a sudden you have to talk to the people at the front desk, at the back end. But for me, it's talking to researchers, because the company that I now work is research oriented. So I have to talk to a lot of different researchers, and I have to understand what they're doing. Otherwise, I cannot give them advice. And that makes it a real challenge. But like I say, I like doing it. It's just a challenge, but I choose it.
I think it stretches you as a human being, not only to understand the law, not only to communicate, but also comprehend what they are doing, what they're trying to achieve, because you need to extract what's in it in terms of privacy or data protection. Because typically we ask, do you process personal data? Simple answer, no. Do you transfer personal data? No. That's how it always starts.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I've learned over the time is that in the beginning, you have a lot of explanation that you do, and people don't really listen because that was the beginning of the GDPR. Nobody really understood it. Then you had all the questionnaires, and you ask people, "What are you doing?" and fill it in, and then you got the text back, and they say, "But I don't understand anything they're doing, and they are not really clear on what they are doing." And indeed, no one was processing personal information. Then when you start talking to them and you explain it, and then you can it's really fishing for information, which means that you have to be able to understand. You have to be able to talk on their level. It doesn't mean that you have to understand everything. I will never say that I understand everything that these researchers here are dreaming about, but I have to translate it into something that is relevant for the GDPR and privacy in general.
Yeah. Mostly I compare it with the role of a CEO. He may not know sales, he may not know marketing, or he may not be an expert in everything, but he needs to manage all departments and understand their needs and pick up if that's aligned with the strategy of the company and if it will serve the business. And that's similarly an interesting challenge. We need to see if they are processing personal data, if data is being transferred, what is at risk, and also comprehend, relate to what is it they are aiming to achieve. Because sometimes it's easy to say, don't do this. And you need to understand what do they want to achieve.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really I've noticed that is becoming less and less present in our companies is that the checkbox DPO, I call them, which are, okay, you have to do this, and that's it. But you need to understand your organization. You need to understand what their goal is, and you need to work with them to find a solution within the boundaries of the legislation, applicable legislation, and still help them for us be innovative, because that's the core business of us. If I would block that, nobody would listen anymore to me. So it is a constant progress of interaction with them, and indeed knowing what they're doing, their purpose, their goal is really important to understand.
Yeah, I fully share that view. And then in that case, since we are talking about that, what does for an organization fit for privacy mean, or being compliant in privacy mean? Because it's an evolving organization, evolving journey. And typically, at least initially, CEOs were saying, are we compliant? Are we done? More and more people are realizing it's never done. It's an ongoing journey. But what does being compliant or being fit in privacy mean?
Yeah, it's for me, I think it is that a company that is fit for privacy cares and takes up the responsibilities related to the processing of personal information. Being aware of it is one thing, but also acting upon it is something else. Because I know there are a lot of companies that are aware, but still you need to do something. So it is more than just being aware. It is really taking up the responsibilities linked with processing personal information. You are actually processing information about people's lives, so you should be taking it serious. And if you do that, then you're already on the good track. I'm not saying that you will ever achieve compliance, because, like you said, that idea is not realistic. Yeah. Because there's no such thing as being compliant. It is trying to achieve and doing the right thing. That's basically what you're aiming for.
Indeed. I think it's taking risk-based decisions, making choices, and knowing what risks you are carrying and trying to reduce, trying to mitigate wherever possible, and staying on top of that risk, because that risk also evolves with time. Like now in the pandemic, the risk has increased because of the remote working, and then you need to manage it differently compared to when we were in the past. We will not give laptops, we will not allow home working, all those things were possible, but these days, those are the norms. So you have to adapt.
Yeah, and I think that the adaptation, you really notice that with the COVID is that the importance is there, that people are aware of the responsibilities linked with that. Working from home, we still want to know what people are doing, but there is a limit, and you need to be aware what you can do. You need to have, and that's, you notice that's a very important topic for an enterprise where people start working. All of a sudden, they have to work from home. We used to work in the office most of the time. Now we're all working from home.
Indeed. So in that context, when we are working from home, privacy is complex. And of course, we know that compliance is an ongoing journey. So what is the biggest challenge you face as a DPO?
I want to split that one into two questions. One is two topics. One is related to the previous one, is that during COVID, when working from home, there's an additional challenge which I do have to admit I underestimated in the beginning a bit, is that my office, I'm generally working in Leuven, but in general, I try to be in the different locations of our company, just to be there, to be present, to be seen, to have an interaction with the people on the work floor, to understand what they're doing. That all disappeared, and you don't have that in a digital world. Yeah, I can try to send a message to someone, but it's different to being actually in the same location. So, and also I have a tendency to read people's behavior and interactions in a discussion, where you can pick up on things that, oh wait, they're not really clear on what I'm explaining, and that's completely gone. So that's a real challenge that I think we face, because we don't want to be top-down DPO saying you have to do this. It has to be, it's a journey. We'll go with it together. Means that we'll talk to you and guide you through the process. That's the challenge that we have now. But the other challenge, if you look in general, as DPO for me, is trying to get people to understand that GDPR and privacy is not that complex. It is complex. There is a lot that is complex, but if you just use common sense, if you just use the basic knowledge that everybody has on personal information, on what you can or cannot do, you're already a long way along on the good road. But in general, you see that people tend to forget what is a good behavior. So translating something complex into something understandable, which people actually should know, is a challenge, which I see. But like I said, it's also an opportunity to learn on and to change your way of communication with people.
Yeah, and I think pandemic has changed the way we communicate, because when we were in the meeting, you used to say, let's go for a coffee at the start or at the end or in the middle, sometimes if it's a long meeting. And in those 1 or 2 minutes, you used to gain a lot of information like, is it making sense? Do you see it? What are your challenges? And those 1, 2, 3, 5-minute conversations were very valuable compared to the 1 hour. And now it's so formal. You start and you end, and in between there's no informal interaction because everybody is formalized. I'm sure there are benefits of this environment, but I think we need a balance of both, maybe a little bit of personalized interaction also.
I do see the advantage also for working at home more, right? Gives me more of an opportunity to actually do my work. But in the same time, like you say, I miss the informal interactions, because the informal interactions sometimes reveal a lot more than the formal ones. You pick up on things that are important, which were not mentioned or forgotten. So it's important to have those.
I fully share that view. And how can some of these things be solved? Like you mentioned, it's challenging to explain to people while it is common sense. So, because we don't want people to become experts in GDPR. All we want them to be is aware and understand enough to come to us as DPO so that we can help them. So they need to know if the situation warrants our input or not. They don't need to decide for themselves on privacy matters in most cases.
So I think that's finding a solution for that is basically, for me, is a bit of finding something that interests people, finding something that is either in their domain of work, but preferably something from your personal life. I have a habit of involving a lot of my personal life in my explanations, things that I have encountered, things that my family has encountered, which are very easy to translate into something that everybody knows. And there are a lot of examples that we all face that are clear violations of privacy when you go in the online world. People just don't realize it. And if you use those examples, people tend to understand it. The difficulty then becomes translating that to the work environment. And that is the second part, is where you start looking at events that happened in a company, events that happened in a company closely linked to your company. And if you manage to find real life examples, people tend to listen.
Yeah.
What I really avoid is trying to be the know-it-all. Somebody who says, you have to do this, and this is the reason, the fines are very high, and that's it. No, people need to understand what they are doing. That's
right.
Important.
And I think fines is a excuse, or is a reason that has been completely misused, and a lot used. People are sick and tired of it. Most of the ones who were to listen to that, and those who are not to listen to that doesn't make sense to them anyhow now. They want to listen to the benefit. They want to listen to what do they have to do practically, not theoretically.
It is. The finding was really in the beginning of when the GDPR came out. It was everybody was screaming, "You get the 20 million fine. You're not allowed to do anything anymore." And true, the finding is there, but the reputational damage, the impact on a company before actually getting a fine is a lot larger, if you ask me, than the actual fine. At least for now. We'll see what happens in the future, but that's what my conclusion for now.
Yeah, that's true. And is there something that frustrates you as a DPO? I mean, frustrate is a strong word, but for the sake of it, to say something that annoys you, frustrates you, like why? Sometimes I've talked to some people and they say, I don't know, why don't my C-level or board or staff get it? And the question is, maybe you're not doing it. But in more lighter terms, is there something that you feel like it frustrates you?
It's one of the advantages of coming from the bottom, from the hierarchy. I've been developer and all these things. I know a lot of each role has its frustration. So I don't call them frustrations anymore. It's just that there are things that everybody faces, which, if you ask me, which is the most difficult thing for me, is that they take your role quite a lot for granted. I'm going to really translate it to my own company, where I work in a research institute. We do research on topics like connected health, human behavior, life science technologies, radar technology, so a whole vast variety of topics. And I have meetings, one after the other, one with connected health, then one with life science, then one with radar technology. And I'm supposed to know, I need to be able to talk with everybody. And I'm supposed to know everything on the spot. And that's something that is we need time. Because if you ask me, is this personal information, and I don't even understand the terms you're using, I have to use material to find out, is it personal information? What is the risk? And they think it's easy. It's just you take the law and you look at it. No, that doesn't how it works.
No, it doesn't.
And the amount of questions I got is, can you give me a list of personal information? That is, I can give you a list of personal information, but I can also give you a much longer list of personal information, information that can be personal in certain conditions. That's a much longer list, and that's the one you should be looking at.
Yeah, I think people miss that it's contextual and it needs to be interpreted. So we are not robots. You put us in a question in the meeting and we will say binary yes, no. We need to analyze, come back with options, and that requires some time study, especially in when they ask for consent, or is this legitimate interest? Is this not legitimate interest? We know our pain, how much of diligence we have to do, but it's a true challenge. I follow that. And you worked in different industries, and even in your current role, you work with different kind of departments.
Mhm.
So how does the role of DPO change in the different context? And we all know, also know privacy is contextual, but does the role of DPO also change, especially when young people are coming in? I was talking to somebody even today, and it was a young student, and he said, I want to become a DPO. And I said, oh, why not? And then he says, I said, okay, what do you think about stakeholders? And he said, I don't have to manage stakeholders. I will talk to the CEO. I will tell him it's his business. And I said, well, I think you will need some experience. I put it very softly, but
Yeah. I agree that I've seen a lot of people that have studied a lot and know the law and then say, okay, I'm a DPO, I know what to do. And there's the whole part when you ask if the DPO role is different from one company to another. Of course, there's a difference, but for me, the basic principle stays the same. You need to know the boundaries, the legal boundaries in which you are working, which change. For me, for example, now I have to take into account different, I need to look at healthcare rulings also, which I didn't have to do before because there's privacy involved there also. Then secondly, you need to know the company. You need to know what the company does, what the purpose is, what the goals are, because otherwise you'll talk to a CEO and he says, yeah, but I'm not interested in that. That's not the point. And then thirdly, and that's really important also, is you need to know the people in your company. And the two first one are quite similar usually, but the third one is, when I look at the company that I'm working now, like I said before, researchers, is a completely different mentality than people that are more administrative people. It doesn't mean that they are more difficult. It just means that they have a different way of thinking. They like to challenge everything because that's their role. They need to challenge things. So you have to be prepared that when you go to a meeting with them, they can challenge you. But in essence, it doesn't change that much. It's the information you're working on, the areas you're working in, and the surroundings that change. But for me, it's still, you have a framework, you have to roll out your framework, you still have to have the checks and balances in place and everything. And that is the same for almost all companies, if you ask me. It's just filling it in, it's different.
I think very well said. We typically say the context, but you contextualize the context as well. Context is about what are the principles with which I need to uphold, what is the business I'm operating in, and who are the people, because it's sometimes people-based reaction rather than what we classify, or the role-based reaction rather than the person against you.
Yeah,
it's very well said.
I've seen a lot of different roles and people, and like I said, back to the beginning, is that it's a challenge, and that's the importance of it. If you, as long as you see it as a challenge and an opportunity, I think it's okay. But
it's quite gratifying also, because that challenge keeps you on your toes and keeps you motivated every day. There's no day which is similar to the other day. Every day is different. Every day is new.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I've been in a project in the past where they asked, you need to define your role exactly. You need to create blocks in which you're going to be working, and all those time management courses also, where you say you need to do this, you need to do this. Yeah, I explained to those people, if I just have to take twice a day I look at my agenda or my inbox in my mailbox, that would be nice, but I can have an emergency all of a sudden, which might not be an emergency, but tomorrow might be a completely different day. I might have planned to work on that, but it changes all of a sudden. You do have to manage that, otherwise you're jumping from one hope to the other. That's not manageable in the long term. So you have to find some balance there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the role I think we're in.
No, it is absolutely true. Once I had my full agenda planned, 9 to 5, I knew what I'll be doing. And 9 o'clock or 8:45, I get in and somebody calls me, there's an audit from CNIL in the France division. Yeah, the day is gone. I just cancel everything. I said, today I'm for those people. and just tell me what are they asking, and we will reply and we will do everything. And the day was gone. And not only the day was gone, because they went in and they left. These are the 10 or 7 things we needed. And the next 10 or 15 days we were working.
Yeah.
Not that we were not ready, but of course you need to collate, you need to prepare, and you need to put it in a way that, you're protecting the organization.
Yeah.
So it is not like a very planned or very structured thing. You can have planned days, structured days, but sometimes it's spontaneous days.
I've also had those opportunities or those issues where you have something planned, and then, but the downside also is that if you work 10 days on something, those 10 days were planned and your backlog is there. So but that's something that I think over time you learn to manage. You create some thick skin where you are aware and you're just doing the best you can, and you need to be clear to your organization what you're doing. A lot of time I've seen a lot of DPOs already that say, but I'm swamped with work. Yes, we're all swamped with work, but you need to communicate that. You need to be able to tell to your bosses that, look, we're doing our best effort. This is what we're doing. And in the end, people understand, but you just have to tell people that it is not, I cannot just look at something 5 minutes and say, okay or not okay. Sometimes I need more time. And I take that time. Otherwise, it will not be, I want to have a decent quality as output.
Exactly. I think, certainly. So you come from a technology background, and I've had people who have been lawyers and they think they need to learn technology. And I've had technology people who say we need to learn the law, and there's never a perfect fit. But I do believe, especially I'm also, I was a developer 20 years ago, then I grew up in IT and then project program management and into GDPR and even IT sourcing. So I understand it all helps. But what's your view? Does coming from technology background help as a TPO?
To a certain extent, it does. But I don't want to go too much into the discussion which background is the best.
No.
How we handled it for our company now, I need to know the aspects of the DPO role I don't know. So I know, for example, I know the GDPR, I know the legislation, but I'm not trained in legal background. So I try to surround me with people that can fill in the gaps that I don't know. For me, it's not knowing everything myself. I need to know the people that know things. So that's the most important thing that I always try to achieve, is some kind of knowledge broker. I know something that I know somebody who knows something that I don't know. So I try to interact with them. But it does help, and it does really help when you talk to specific people, for example, from the IT background. At least I don't understand exactly what they're doing, because once you have been out of IT for 10 years for me almost now, I think it's completely different. I used to program on a mainframe, so that's a completely different world we're in now. But I do understand the concepts, and I do still understand, and I still follow up on network issues and security issues, just to be aware. For me, the most important thing to have, and that's something you cannot train from books, is not the legal background, and it's not the IT background. It is your social interaction or diplomacy skills, which are a much more important thing, because that's something you cannot, you can learn over time, but you cannot hire somebody else to do that for you. You need to be there in front of the board. You need to be there in front of people who have questions. But then you can ask somebody, an expert in the field, what should I be doing there? And then you translate it. And that's something that is very difficult to find, but it's worth looking for.
Yeah, I think call it diplomacy, call it affinity to understand different problems, call it affinity to solve problems. It's not about one background or the other. It's a team effort. If you're coming from technology, you understand technology, you need a little bit of help on law. If you're coming from law, you may want help on technology understanding, because DPO, as we talked earlier, it's a complex role involving multiple dimensions, multiple departments. So it's no one size fit all. It's good for the media to say you need to be technology oriented and so on. I even had one person telling me, every DPO should learn to code. I mean, of course, good luck. Then every DPO should also learn sales things and everything, because it's easy to say, hey, there's a website that's not compliant, let's stop it because it's a risk. But business needs to run. You need to manage it, manage the risk, and make a plan to mitigate that risk. Business will not stop one day just because it's non-compliance. You need to get a plan to get compliant.
Yeah, but I do think it is important for me is that you need to be willing to learn the others. Yes. The thing that I don't know, I need to learn. I don't want to know everything, but I need to be able to interact, because I'm the first line for a lot of questions, and then I need to be able to answer those questions, or at least translate it to somebody who can answer it. So you need to be willing. What you don't know, you need to be willing to learn it, and that's something that is. And don't ever. I've seen quite a few DPOs saying that I know it all. No, there's no way you can know everything in our role, and you should never position that way.
Rather, you should be ready to be challenged.
Yeah.
Because if you're challenged, okay, maybe sometimes not in front of your staff, maybe with other DPOs in a more safe environment. But if you're not getting challenged, you're not growing and you're not improving as a DPO. It's very important to be challenged, very important to solidify your concepts and validate them, because the beauty of GDPR or privacy laws is you may have one opinion on the same situation, I may have another, and somebody else may have another. The idea is not who's right. The idea is how did we arrive at that and what is our rationale?
Yeah, and you touch on something interesting there when you say not in front of your staff or not in front of your business. I've been in that position when they ask you questions and then you are not able to answer. Over time, I learned you just plainly admit that you don't know something is not wrong. If you ask them, what do you mean with that? They will explain it to you, because most of the time they are willing to explain it. And sometimes you get too much information because it becomes difficult, but they are quite willing to explain it. But that's completely different if you start saying, I know it, and this is just ask people, admit that you don't know something, say, I will look into it. That works really well. But you need to be able to do that. And it is putting yourself in a position of weakness. People might think of it, but I think it works for me.
It's transparency more. I mean, okay, it's a GDPR principle, but at the end of the day, it's transparency. If you're not transparent with them, they will not be transparent with you, and it leads to then trust issues eventually. I mean, forget GDPR, any role you are in, if you try to bluff, if you try to, make it up, you'll be caught very soon. Okay, maybe not the first time, but very soon you'll be caught. It's a matter of time.
Yeah, but on the other hand, to touch on that also is that you also notice that some people don't dare. I'm not saying you have to bluff, but like you said, there is an opinion. I have an opinion. You have an opinion. Somebody else might have an opinion. And if I ask that same question within a month, we'll have you will have another opinion, and I might have another opinion again. But it doesn't hurt to take a position. It doesn't hurt to say, I think this is how it should be. But that's also the other side. You have people who go overboard saying, I know what it is. But you also have the other side where people don't dare to take a position. And that's just as harmful. You just have to, at a certain point, you have to say, okay, we're going for this because I think at the current knowledge, the current status of technology this is the best solution. Take up that position, and you might be challenged, but be willing to defend that challenge and to explain and listen. Might be that you're wrong, and then change it over time.
Absolutely. So we had a very fun conversation, a very engaging conversation. Is there any final message that you would like to pass? Of course, I would love to continue, but in essence of time, what's the final message you would like to pass?
The final message, for me, I think I've already mentioned it, is that basically it is if you're a DPO, don't be a textbook DPO. You will not last very long. It will either you'll get bored of your job because nobody listens to you, or the other side is that the company will not be willing to listen to you anymore and will more or less guide you to the exit. And the other thing that is very important for me is that listen and learn from each other, because it is you don't have to reinvent everything. There is a lot that has been done. Just interact with your peers in other companies. You don't have to explain the details of your company, but at least try to interact. And that's something that I'm sometimes a bit missing, that people are not willing to share their experience because it's so valuable to understand other people's opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but you can still learn from it.
Yeah, it's just an opinion, and keep it an opinion and learn. So thank you so much for being here. And if someone based on this conversation wants to ask you a question or follow up, is there a way they can get in touch with you?
The safest way is to use via LinkedIn. Contact me via there and I'll get in contact with you.
Great. So Klaas, it was wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your opinion, sharing your time, and sharing your experiences.
It was a pleasure to do this.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. And now we ask you for some help. Take a moment to subscribe and review this podcast. Your support matters. And if you have done it already, thank you so much. Now, if you have questions or suggestions, drop an email at hello@fit4privacy.com. And finally, if you know someone who will benefit from this, share this podcast with them and help us grow. Thank you so much. Stay safe and see you next time.